And now let's move on to our third and final panelist, Anjli Shah, who is presenting Anekantvad and Democracy Beyond the Ballot Box. Over to you, Anjli.
Cool, thanks. Okay, I'm gonna share my screen. Okay, can you all see my screen? Okay, cool. Hi everyone. Hard to follow that, but I will try. So I work at an organization called One Project. I'm a program officer for Philanthropic Partnerships, and we work to build infrastructure for a new economy. I don't presume that I'm an expert on new economy or economic systems or Jainism. So in the spirit of Anekantvad, I share this perspective with the excitement to learn from you. So, what I want to talk about today is a big idea. The core of what I want to talk about is how Anekantvad can help us imagine and build a democratic economy where compassionate action becomes the default action. So, on that note, let's start with the word economy. I might define this as a system of rules and relationships that determines how resources move. What's get produced, what gets distributed, who gets it. Let's look at another way to think about it. Economy. Eco comes from the Greek word oikos, meaning home, and nomos, meaning nami, from nomos, meaning management. Economy at its root words means the management of home. And that matters because the management of home can be good or bad, depending on how you do it. Now, the founder of the organization I work for at One Project puts it well. You get what you incentivize. Right now, our economy incentivizes maximizing financial return above all else, above health, above safety, above the planet. So, if sugary food is more profitable, then of course we will get a diabetes epidemic because that's what we've incentivized. If a tree is worth more dead than alive, then of course we will end up destroying forests. Let's take health as a concrete example. A pharmaceutical company that is owned by shareholders has a structural incentive in their self-interest to prioritize and maximize profit for these shareholders to keep people sick, essentially, not health outcomes. So the people most affected by those decisions, patients, doctors, nurses, we don't have a formal say in how those institutions operate. The limited ownership, a few shareholders, means limited perspectives. The limited perspectives determines the priorities, and the priorities shapes everything downstream. So a few decide and a few benefit. So what do we do? As individuals, as Jains, we try, we go vegan, we vote, we choose ethical brands, we donate, we make careful choices, and that is real and that is meaningful. But what I want to highlight is that we're trying our best to live Jain values within an economic system that is designed to reward harm as long as it is generating profit. We are swimming upstream. In our Jain tradition, there's a concept that from Jain logic of mithyatva, or false knowledge. And Sahana had shared an excerpt from a book. So shout out to Sahana's Nana for helping me with this too. That had a really nice analogy that we mistake a mirage for water and we run toward it thinking it will quench our thirst. And I'd argue that we've done the exact same thing with our economy. We've prioritized financial return and made it a synonym for well-being, a synonym for the good management of our home. And that to me, in my view, seems like false knowledge because they are genuinely, fundamentally different things. So this is where I think Anekantvad becomes not just a religious or philosophical concept, but a design principle that is aligned with democratic values. Anekantvad tells us that no single perspective holds the truth. When you have people from genuinely different backgrounds, different relationships to a place, different needs and experiences, and you bring institutions that bring them into real decisions together, you don't just get closer to truth, you get deeper understanding. So what does it mean that a relatively small number of people, investors, executives, are making the economic decisions that shape most of our lives? Why not the perspectives of the many, as Anekantvad teaches us? Why have we accepted that our values are personal decisions rather than structural possibilities? So the organization I work for, One Project, is helping to help design a new kind of economy. This is called by many different names in different spaces: regenerative economy, democratic economy, solidarity economy. We call it economic democracy. And economic democracy calls for a shift from an extractive economy toward a democratic, regenerative one. And it is grounded in the core idea that when communities have real power to collectively shape the decisions that affect them, they set different priorities. Our economy our management of home shifts from incentivizing maximum accumulation of wealth to one that incentivizes the things that we want and need, like healthy, affordable food, clean air, secure work, the kinds of priorities that are informed by the perspectives of the many and their needs rather than a few people. And I argue that this is an economy that is aligned with Anekantvad. This movement from an extractive to regenerative economy, it's helpful to know it is also known as a just transition. And it originates from labor unions and environmental justice groups who are been on the front lines of polluting industries and communities living by them that saw the need to phase out these industries that were harming workers, harming the planet, while also providing still good jobs for their communities. And built based on that history, building on that history, organizations like Movement Generation and the Climate Justice Alliance developed a framework called the Just Transition Framework, which guides both the work of my organization and hundreds of organizations that are working toward this. So, the thing that I'm excited to share is that this isn't like a utopian big idea. It exists. It's happening right now in the US, globally. And it doesn't mean that every person votes on every possible decision. So I want to share a few examples. Let's look at a model called participatory budgeting. So participatory budgeting is a democratic process where community members bring their different perspectives, just as Anekantvad encourages, to decide how to spend part of a public budget. This started in Brazil, and in the US, it's flourished. In Massachusetts and Boston, a group called the Center for Economic Democracy grew the participatory budgeting movement from a youth-led process in the city in 2013 to the first permanent office of participatory budgeting. In Cambridge, residents have directed over 10 million since 2014 to things like climate resilience, digital access, street safety. In Somerville, Massachusetts, there's been 4,000 residents engaged. They've directed 2 million in after-school programs, food security, ecosystem restoration. And recently in Seattle, ran a 27 million participatory budgeting process, which is one of the largest in the country. And residents directed funds toward food equity, mental health crisis response, housing stability to encourage community safety. I'm going to skip some of these examples just for time, but happy to share more. Let's look at how this applies to environment. So in New York, Sunset Park Solar is New York City's first cooperatively owned community solar project. What makes it distinctly more than just a solar project is how it's governed. So Sunset Park isn't just clean energy. It is governed energy that is owned, governed, benefiting the same Sunset Park residents who are breathing the air and paying the bills. So through the New York City Community Energy Cooperative, every member, whether a family, a household, a local business, brings their own perspectives across age, language, background, experience, collectively decides what projects to build, where to invest, what benefits to develop. In my view, that's Anekantvad as infrastructure. So, before this panel, my dad texted me that on the freeway home, there was an oil tanker that turned over. Luckily, there's no injuries, but it spilled like 7,000 gallons of oil. And I'm like, who's going to clean that up? Right. And so when I look at something like this, I see this leading to prioritizing things that matter to people and our multiple needs. Clean air, reliable energy, affordability. So Sunset Park Solar, they guarantee for their residents, who are the people, again, who are making the decisions, but also one paying the bills, that the bills will be at least 15% less than the original electricity bills. They're creating green jobs for local residents. The project will offset 13,000 tons of greenhouse gas over the course of its lifetime. And the revenues goes back into a fund that will be governed by members to benefit their community. The last example I'll share is one out of the US called Mondragon. So Mondragon is a federation of worker-owned cooperatives in Spain, and it employs over 80,000 workers. So at Mondragon, every worker owner has a role and a vote in governance, from electing the board to setting wage ratios to deciding what surplus gets invested back into. So when you have 80,000 people across manufacturing, retail, finance, education with the real say in how the enterprise runs, you get a fundamentally different set of priority than when a small group of shareholders who might not even live or work there are deciding. So what has this resulted in there? No executive earns more than 6 times the lowest paid worker. When Spain's economy collapsed during the 2008 financial crisis, national unemployment exceeded 25%, Mondragon was able to keep joblessness to under half the national average. When individual businesses within the network fail, the workers aren't simply laid off. They are relocated to other cooperatives within the Federation because workers are owners. And for them, the core purpose is protecting people rather than maximizing returns for a very small number of owners. So again, I really see this as Anekantvad, as economic infrastructure. The people affected by decisions are the ones making them, and the diversity of their perspectives produces something stronger. I'll end by just saying I really believe economic democracy offers one of the clearest expressions of how Anekantvad can truly be reflected in the structure of society. And what these examples highlight is that you get what you incentivize, and setting the right incentives, making good decisions requires more perspectives, not fewer. And our current economy prioritizes profit above all else. People shouldn't have to swim against this current to live by their values. We should be building better rivers. So I'll just end by saying, I know that some folks might be thinking this is huge. What can I possibly do as an individual? And there's a quote that I really love from a science fiction author named Ursula Le Guin, who has said, we live in capitalism. Its power seems inescapable, but then so did the divine right of kings. Any human power can be resisted and changed by human beings. There is a spectrum of involvement. You can be engaged in many of these things as one. One is redistribution, as Mo talked about. Resource the organizations that are leading this work. Check out local groups that are part of some organizations like New Economy Coalition, Climate Justice Alliance, Right to the City Alliance. They're some of the organizations connecting organizations doing this work nationally. You can learn, there's plenty of resources like the Solidarity Economy 101 from New Economy Coalition. They have a course called Economics for Emancipation. There's great podcasts out there. Get into community. I've started volunteering at my local tool library. There's mutual aid networks, tenant unions. These are places where the push to move from extraction to regeneration is really alive, where people are actively practicing working cooperatively. And if any of this resonates with you and you want to connect, please feel free to reach out. I'd love to meet you.